for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, August the 6th. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. And let's see how this beautiful weather is continuing. Mostly cloudy and humid today with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm, mainly later, a high of 84. A thunderstorm in spots tonight, a low of 69. A thunderstorm tomorrow, a high of 82. Saturday, a couple of showers and a thunderstorm, a high of 83. And nationally, our high was in Henderson, Nevada, 104. The low was in West Yellowstone, Montana, 28. Sunrise this morning at 6:12 a.m., sunset tonight at 8:30 p.m. And our weather trivia: what is the Saffir-Simpson scale? A scale from 1 to 5 that rates the damage potential of a hurricane. I'm sure we'll all remember that one, but that's what its name is. And now to our front page news. Polluted past resurfaces at Tift Nature Preserve. Several walking trails are closed to the public in a treasured nature preserve in Buffalo after what may be decades-old contaminants were found in the soil and groundwater. The Department of Environmental Conservation has closed trails in the 264-acre Tift Nature Preserve while it investigates the pollution. Slight elevations of arsenic, lead, chromium, and polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, were found in a few small areas of the soil and surface water at the preserve. The DEC also collected fish samples from Lake Kirsty, but those results have not yet been disclosed. To keep members of the public away from the pollution, the DEC and City of Buffalo put up 6-foot fencing around a large portion of the preserve at the end of May. I'd say it was very much out of an abundance of caution, a pretty extreme measure to keep all those areas cordoned off while they conduct their future testing, said Buffalo Deputy Mayor Ben Swanekamp. But the park is perfectly safe. Both areas that had the higher test results were areas that were off the trail. Anglers fishing in Lake Kirsty are advised not to eat any of the fish caught there. The trails closed include those around the East Canal of Lake Kirsty in the preserve, a portion of the service trail, Old Tift Street, Mounds Bypass Trail, and Snake Root Trail. It's unclear how long the DEC's investigation will take or when the trails may reopen. This month, the DEC plans to sample off-trail areas and deep water sediments. In September, the agency expects to conduct subsurface soil sampling across the site and begin hydrogeological monitoring to better understand groundwater patterns around the Tift site. If the investigation determines additional actions are needed to address contamination, appropriate measures will be taken during cleanup activities to continue safeguarding public health and the environment, the DEC and State Department of Health said in a joint email statement to the Buffalo News. The contamination was first discovered in July 2025 by work crews doing habitat enhancement in the East Canal. During the work, the crews found an unusual oily sheen in the water. This isn't at all a surprise to me. As I think most folks know, TIFF is on a former industrial site. It has a history to it. It's the nature of the preserve, said Swanekamp. Hazardous waste was dumped in the area of what was then called TIFF Farm from the early 1900s through around 1975. Waste slag from the steel industry, sludge, foundry sand, fly ash, and other garbage was dumped there throughout Buffalo's industrial heyday. The city of Buffalo bought the site in 1972 to dump debris from Unity Island during the expansion of its wastewater treatment plant. At the time, the debris was placed in mounds covered with clay topsoil and planted with grasses. This area is known as the Mounds area in the preserve. In 1974, the TIFF Farm received a grant from New York to develop the site into a wildlife preserve and nature sanctuary. However, in 1975, acid sludge was reportedly dumped on the site. After the reports, the DEC seized all disposals to the property. Despite the dumping, several accounts in newspapers and scientific reports recall how Mother Nature always fought back. Primary credit goes to nature and her refusal to abandon an area abused and rejected by man. Read a 1975 report by the environmental firm Ecoplans, which conducted a study of the ecosystem at the property. The TIFF Farm, even today, is an eloquent and powerful statement of nature's ability to reclaim an environment abandoned by man. By 1976, the Buffalo Museum of Science started operating the site as a nature preserve. In 1983, more than 100 drums of various waste were removed from Lake Kirsty, Lisa Pond, and the east side of the Mound area. A subsequent investigation in 1991 at the property did not find any additional drums or hazardous waste. However, leftover contamination consistent with industrial fill still existed on the property. In 2011, the property was removed from the DEC's inactive hazardous waste disposal site list, as, at the time, it no longer presents a threat to public health or the environment, according to the D-list notice. The trails not blocked off during the DEC's investigation are open from dawn to dusk. Several workshops, camps, and classes are held at the preserve year-round. It's great that people a generation before us had the forethought to try and take this industrial site and make it a beautiful green space, Swanekamp said. So we just want to protect that. Ruth?
Proposed deal would give Iran control of ships entering strait. And this is from Reuters. A proposed deal between Iran and Oman would give Tehran control over ships entering the Gulf through the Straits of Hormuz, a senior Iranian source and two regional officials told Reuters on Wednesday, in one of the biggest concessions yet to Iran. Despite the apparent step towards yielding to Iranian demands, the sources pushed back against assertions by President Trump that a deal reopening the strait was imminent. Iran later reported significant progress in the talks with Oman over transit routes, saying both inward and outward journeys would pass through Iranian waters. U.S. officials have repeatedly said that they would never accept any arrangement that lets Iran control access to the world's most important trade route for energy supplies. The concession has already been made regarding some form of control over Hormuz, one of the regional sources told Reuters. The other regional source said there were still details to be determined about how control would be defined, with Gulf negotiators insisting regional countries supervise inspection of ships and that any payment of fees be voluntary. The senior Iranian source said the text of an agreement already on the table envisioned Iran having control of ships heading into the Gulf through the strait, and one of the main sticking points was what role Iran would have over other ships heading in the opposite direction. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister, Kazem Garibaldi, said later in comments to Iran's official IRNA news agency, a significant portion of this new route is located in Iranian territorial waters, and a part of it is in Omani territorial waters. It is designed in such a way that commercial ships will pass through Iranian territorial waters, both on the inbound and outbound legs of their journey. He said the talks with Oman had reached fundamental understandings on issues including the map of the routes for the entry and exit of maritime traffic. This progress is on the verge of being finalized. Months of U.S. military efforts, including a 2-week campaign of strikes in July, have not broken Iran's grip on the strait. U.S. commanders advised Trump in July that they were running low on supplies of some munitions. Reuters reported on Tuesday that the U.S. Army had used up nearly all of its long-range precision missiles. Trump and senior officials in his administration have said in recent days that a deal is imminent to end the war he launched in February, and which polls show most U.S. voters oppose. There was no immediate reply from Washington about any proposed agreement. Oil prices edged lower on Wednesday after ticking higher following the Iran-alleged Houthi movement in Yemen saying it had fired on a Saudi-flagged tanker in the Red Sea, the latest attack on Middle East shipping that has disrupted global energy supplies. Crude prices have plunged over the past 2 days after Trump called off fresh attacks on Iran, citing talks he said could end the conflict. Trump told Fox News's At Night with Tracy Gallagher program that talks were moving along nicely, and an all-day negotiation had taken place on Tuesday. The Strait of Hormuz is going to be open very soon, Trump added. Over the weekend, Trump cited the negotiations as the reason for a decision to call off plans for massive attacks on Iran, a pattern he has repeated numerous times throughout the war. An Iranian source said, "The devil is in the details. A single tweet from Trump could cause the whole thing to collapse." At a regular briefing in New York, Deputy UN spokesperson Farhan Haq said the United Nations had received no first-hand information about a possible reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, but added, "We certainly encourage the parties to move forward with any effort to have a negotiated solution to the issue." An agreement that gives Iran any control over access to the strait would mean the war launched by the United States and Israel had resulted in a major shift in the balance of regional power in Tehran's favor. Before the war, the strait was freely open to all ships with no fees. But Trump, who initially said Operation Epic Fury would end in Iran's unconditional surrender, with him approving the choice of its leader, has been under pressure to find a way out of a war U.S. voters now oppose 2-1. According to the senior Iranian official, Iran is seeking fees of between 5 and 7% of the price of cargoes from ships using the strait. Oman is discussing smaller fees of around 3%, while Washington wants no fees at all. Making any fees voluntary, at least nominally, could be a way out of the impasse, although an implied threat of Iranian attacks could mean shippers would be unlikely to risk transit without paying.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 14 minutes after the hour, and we will move on to our editorial. Deferred maintenance. It's not at all shocking that the cost of fixing and maintaining Erie County's 2 jails are increasing. Everything is getting more expensive to build, restore, and repair. No surprise that this would be doubly true with the complex structures of these 2 jails. Jail repairs would be just that, repairs, according to Erie County officials. Even if $10 million a year over 6 years, as estimated, was spent on various projects, there would be no modernization, no redesign, and no possible savings. As reported by the News' Sandra Tan, both Erie County Sheriff John Garcia and Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz are frustrated by county lawmakers' refusal to fund a new jail project, even if long-term personnel and maintenance savings came along with the upfront cost. Admittedly, the legislators have legitimate reasons. The price tag is daunting. Even creating a unified and consolidated jail facility at the Alden site, which would mean closing the downtown holding center, would cost at least $430 million. That's almost twice as much as Erie County spent on the new Buffalo Bills Stadium, a much more popular project for taxpayers. But just saying no shouldn't be the only answer here. While it's true that there is a strong lack of public support for spending money on jails, the reasons for that distaste shouldn't necessarily convince thoughtful public servants. Many dismiss those unfortunate enough to wind up behind bars as deserving of whatever privations, no matter how inhumane, they may have to endure. That's not a mindset that has a place in a just society. Dehumanizing people, many of whom have not had their court dates and are proven guilty of nothing, is always wrong. These are members of our community and they deserve fair treatment. A much more compelling argument against spending money on a new jail is raised by advocates who point out that a deep-seated culture of inattention to prisoner safety and medical care persists in Erie County facilities. Concerning occurrences that including jail deaths have continued since Garcia took office in January 2022, though the current sheriff has instituted improvements that won Erie County Jail's accreditation from the National Commission on Correctional Health Care. Still, there was the July death of Antonio Pizarro at the Erie County Holding Center, apparently at the hands of 2 other inmates. Questions about why such an attack was not stopped in progress remain. That's only the most recent incident. There have been dozens of inmate deaths over the last 2 decades, many of which could be easily traced to the failure of jail policies and operations, and millions of dollars have been awarded in settlements to grieving family members. There is currently a wrongful death suit over the 2023 death of Sean Humphrey, who died of asphyxia during a struggle with deputies while in custody. The New York State Attorney General's Office of Special Investigations has opened an inquiry. The treatment of inmates with medical issues and mental illness continues to be cause of serious concern at both Erie County facilities. These are not the kind of problems that can be readily traced to deferred maintenance of physical structures. Upgrades to the jail should include meaningful changes that would help these facilities actually rehabilitate behavior. Instead, we're hearing about fixtures that need to be replaced, broken locking mechanisms, and vents repair. That type of maintenance will do nothing to ensure the health and safety of corrections officers and the people incarcerated there, much less provide services that effectively target the mental health and substance abuse issues suffered by a significant portion of inmates. Poloncarz is likely correct when he notes that this is going to have to be built someday, and the longer it goes without being built, the more expensive it's going to be in the long run. There are other even graver costs to be factored in, including continuing safety concerns and the possibility of more jail deaths. Only real reform can address them.
And our Another Voice article is on home ownership, and it's written by Mark Biron, who is the chief executive of Home Diversified Solutions Corporation, and Steven Siegel, who serves as an independent advisory capacity. The typical American household holds 60% to 70% of its net worth in a single asset, the family home. One property, one on one street, in one city. No pension fund, insurer, or asset manager would be permitted to run money this way. Homeowners bear the full idiosyncratic price risk of a single property, with no practical way to offset local losses against gains elsewhere. The cost of that omission was made brutally visible after 2007. The S&P Case Shiller National Index fell 27.4% from peak to trough. However, during two homeowners with similar credit scores and underwriting could meet opposite fates, depending on where they lived. Diversification could have substantially absorbed this risk. Housing futures began trading on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange in 2006. They failed because homeowners could not realistically trade futures. Institutions lacked the natural offsetting exposure needed to make deep markets, and the basis risk between city index and an individual home was too large. A more practical solution is to embed diversification in the housing finance transaction itself. A homeowner enters a non-tradable, subordinated contract that exchanges the home's individual price performance for the weighted average return of a broad pool. If the home outperforms the pool, the homeowner pays the difference when the arrangement terminates. If it underperforms, the pool pays the homeowner. The family keeps the house, the occupancy, and every consumption benefit of ownership. Between 1999 and 2020, a diversified mortgage requiring no down payment produced expected annual credit losses of roughly 5 basis points, compared with about 29 basis points for a conventional mortgage with a 20% down payment. Diversification could make responsibly underwritten low down payment lending far safer. Lower risk supports a lower required return. On a $300,000 home held for 15 years, our analysis estimates the capitalized value of the benefit at roughly $44,000 in today's money, about 14% of the home's value. It is remarkable that diversification had not been applied to housing. Modern finance should no longer accept this level of risk as an unavoidable condition of homeownership.
And our editorial cartoon today is from Mike Lukovich of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It is one frame. It is a picture of two, looks like sheep keepers or sheep herders in Iran. They have their sheep, and one has a staff and the other one has a rifle and looks like a military hat. And the Iranian that has the staff is saying to the other one holding the rifle, "I think America's low on munitions," as they see a sink flying over, indicating our diminishing resources of munitions.
Our first opinion piece is by John Crisp from the Tribune News Service. Fauci pleads the Fifth amid a firestorm. That's the problem with the Fifth Amendment. It tends to make you look guilty. So I cringed a little the first 2 or 3 times Dr. Anthony Fauci invoked his constitutional protection against self-incrimination when he appeared last week before the U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. But as he continued to rely on the Fifth, eventually more than 100 times over a brutal 3-hour grilling, I began to come around. Who are these Republicans who seem so hell-bent on entrapping Fauci for inconsistencies or misstatements that he might have committed during dozens of interviews, press conferences, congressional hearings, and diary entries? Ask any of them who actually won the 2020 election, who served as president from 2021 through 2024, and they will refuse to answer. It's President Trump's version of the Fifth Amendment. No Republican who hopes to remain in good standing can honestly answer that question. In fact, Any courageous Republican who dares to answer straightforwardly will be incriminated big time with Trump. And why are they looking at Fauci's personal diary? True, he made the mistake of writing the diary on a government computer, but that's a weak pretext upon which to dishonor one of the most basic rights of Americans, the right to privacy. There's something deeply hypocritical about exposing a diary that Fauci clearly intended to be private, while tolerating the concealment of the Epstein files, which were, by law, supposed to have been fully released by December 2025. Some news sources that have reviewed the diary say that it contains inconsistencies between some of Fauci's public statements during the pandemic and the private diary entries. Other sources say that the alleged discrepancies are overblown and that they reflect the uncertainty and confusion that naturally occurs when confronting a mysterious new virus. But a confrontational Senate hearing mounted by Republicans who have publicly expressed a desire to prosecute Fauci, Senator Rand Paul has said that he wants Fauci behind bars, is not the right forum in which to hold Fauci to account. Furthermore, these same Republicans have shown no interest in holding to account the leader ultimately responsible for our nation's pandemic response, Trump. In January 2020, Trump assured the nation that the pandemic was totally under control. In February, he said that it was going to disappear like a miracle. Also in February, he said, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. But in March, Trump was recorded telling journalist Bob Woodward, "I always wanted to play it down. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic." Are there any Republicans who would care to hold Trump to account for discrepancies between what he said about the pandemic in public and in private? I doubt it, but Fauci is a target they're not afraid of. Fauci may have made mistakes, but a lot of the criticism leveled at him is 20/20 hindsight. Maybe the schools were closed for too long. Maybe masks weren't as effective as some thought. Maybe we should have tried injecting victims with disinfectant, as Trump suggested. But Paul and his Republican colleagues staged a 3-hour spectacle aimed at humiliating, blaming, insulting, and maybe indicting and prosecuting Fauci. COVID-19 killed 1 million Americans. At the beginning, no one could guarantee that there wouldn't be 10 million or 20 million deaths. The responsibility for a nation's safety was borne by longtime public servants such as Fauci. Would you have wanted that responsibility?
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 28 minutes after the hour. We'll continue with our opinion pieces next, coming from Tion Hayes of Progressive Perspectives. Decline in WIC use is an urgent warning, not a success story. For more than 50 years, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, WIC, has been a critical lifeline for millions of pregnant and postpartum women, infants, and young children. The federal program provides healthy food, nutrition, education, breastfeeding support, and connections to health care. WIC helps families build healthier beginnings during some of life's most vulnerable moments. But behind the program's success, a troubling shift is taking place. A number of people receiving assistance through the program has dropped. Between October 2025 and February 2026, WIC participation had declined nearly by 250,000 people, according to a report by the National Center for Children in Poverty. Every group served by the program shrank, whether it was for pregnant women, breastfeeding mothers, infants, postpartum women, or young children. Programs serving children ages 1 to 4 experienced the largest decline. While participation ticked up slightly for some groups in March, those modest gains recovered only a small fraction of the total lost participation. Why are so many families dropping away from a program that we know works? These families did not suddenly stop needing WIC. Rather, they encountered new barriers to accessing it. For many immigrant families, fear of immigration enforcement, spurred by public charge policies from the Department of Homeland Security, has created a chilling effect that keeps eligible families from receiving the help they need. The changes create new uncertainty about when assessing public benefits will be considered in decisions over whether to grant lawful permanent resident status. In fact, research shows that the proposed 2019 public charge rule led significant numbers of immigrant families to decide against enrolling in WIC. But every drop of participation represents a family with diminished access to healthy food, nutrition, counseling, and other critical health and social services. These losses can increase stress during an already vulnerable period, while children who miss out on adequate nutrition in their earliest years face consequences that extend far beyond infancy. When families disappear from WIC, they don't disappear from need. They disappear from our systems, our data, and ultimately our attention. As a Black mother and policy advocate, I know healthy pregnancies and healthy babies require more than hope. They also require access to programs and supports that help families thrive. Research has long shown that early nutrition shapes cognitive development, school readiness, lifelong health, and ultimately economic opportunity. This quiet decline in WIC participation represents an erosion of one of our nation's strongest investments in healthy beginnings. Moreover, these losses are not felt equally. Black women continue to be more likely continue to be more than 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. Communities of color and immigrant communities also encounter long-standing barriers to healthcare, nutrition, and economic security, making uninterrupted access to WIC especially critical. And as families struggle to stay connected to WIC, millions of families are also losing access to SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and other critical support, while Congress considers additional cuts. Let's be clear. Children are still going hungry, and families continue to navigate an affordability crisis that makes it harder to put food on the table, obtain health care, and make ends meet. The consequences of these trends will shape the health, well-being, and opportunities in our communities for generations to come. We cannot afford to provide less for families when they need us most. Before we debate cutting essential supports further, we must first ask why millions of people are no longer accessing the programs that help them thrive. Today's participation numbers are an urgent warning that access is eroding. Before making additional cuts, we owe families something much simpler: the commitment to understand why they are disappearing from these programs and to remove the barriers keeping them from the care they deserve. The erosion of WIC isn't just a loss for today's families, it is a loss for our nation's future.
And our final opinion piece is written by Martin Schramm, who's from the Tribune News Service. Fighting fake news starts with reporters demanding proof. We've all got the same problem these days. No matter which news screen we are watching or which news silo site our screen is tuned to, we are finding it is harder than ever to tell the trustworthy newsmakers from the news fakers. Everyone on every news screen seems to have an angle these days. And we need to admit there's one thing more. Too many of my journalistic colleagues just don't seem as good as they need to be at making sure today's newsmakers are showing and telling it like it really is. That's why we need to scroll back a couple of weeks and take a fresh look at a recent news-making moment. It was a moment in which solid journalism pierced what was about to become yet another trial balloon of opinion-warping fake news, just as it was being made. And frankly, most in my business seem to have missed the significance of the moment, which means you may have also. So let's look back at what happened on July 19th on CBS's News Face the Nation. Perhaps it will help both Washington's newsmakers and news chroniclers recalibrate how we do our jobs. Moderator Margaret Brennan was interviewing President Trump's White House border czar, Tom Homan. Yes, that's really his title. Homan clearly came to the interview locked and loaded with talking points intended to convince Americans that agents of Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement, ICE, are misunderstood and underappreciated. Homan, who formerly commanded ICE and may well have been born looking like the tough, no-nonsense enforcement guy he is today, started by blaming the violence on politicians who say bad things about good ICE agents. Brennan started by truth-checking each of Homan's assertions. "I've done this since 1984, Homan began. My concern is a lot of the rhetoric from members of Congress saying ICE isn't a real law enforcement agency emboldens some people to say, I'm not going to comply with ICE. And I think no matter what people think of ICE, no matter what you think of immigration law, you should always comply with law enforcement." "Yes," said CBS moderator Brennan, "but in the shootings in both Houston and Maine, the people who were killed were not the intended targets. These were fatal shootings. And in Houston, it was an unmarked car. So when you're saying don't resist, these individuals who were chasing the man who died didn't have markings on that vehicle that would allow the driver to know that they were ICE." "No, they have emergency lights," Homan quickly countered. This was the first of several times he would insist the unmarked ICE car had flashing enforcement lights. They are talking about the July 7th killing in Houston of Lorenzo Salgado Arroyo, 52, a Mexican national who had been building homes in Houston for many years. He was driving his three-man crew in a white van. ICE agents were looking for a different Latino man in a different white van, but when they saw Salgado's van in the same neighborhood, they began aggressively tailing him in their two unmarked black SUVs. They caught him. He was killed by a gunshot to his right side, but we've seen no video of what happened. Later, Homan added suspects would be alive today if they simply complied when stopped by federal law enforcement. If you don't think you're being treated right and they had no reason to stop you, then take them to court. Just sue. Get a lawyer and argue in court. Brennan noted that the family of the man in Houston said he thought he was being robbed because it was an unmarked vehicle. They had emergency lights, Homan insisted yet again. They activate emergency lights, blue lights. Brennan challenged the czar. "Have you seen that on video? Because we haven't." "Seen what on video, ma'am?" Homan asked. "That there were lights," Brennan replied. "Because in the videos that we've seen, there weren't. And because there weren't body cameras, it is hard to substantiate some of what you are saying." For the first time, Homan looked like a border czar who realized he hadn't done his homework, and he was about to get caught. To his credit, Homan owned up to the inevitable. "Well, I have not seen the videos," Homan admitted. "Now, if they didn't activate the lights, then there's an issue there. So let me just caveat that. They should have been equipped with lights and sirens. So no, I do not know specifically if they activated those lights." This became a significant journalistic moment for Brennan and CBS News, but it fell just short of being game, set, and match. It's a reality I discovered way back in the late 1980s while reporting for a book I wrote, The Great American Video Game, Presidential Politics in the Television Age. Back then, television journalists often overlooked the reality that they had one journalistic advantage that print and radio journalists just don't have. They are TV. Time and again, I saw that video images left influential impressions on voters that seemed to last forever. Brennan had done her pre-interview homework. She saw the videos from private security cameras, 2 black SUVs chasing one white van, and no flashing blue lights on either unmarked ICE vehicle. This was a made-for-TV news-making moment. CBS missed a chance to end its show by simultaneously showing Homan and all of us the video Brennan had seen. Better yet, this deserved to be a split-screen moment. On the left, the unmarked ICE vehicles chasing through Houston with no lights blinking. On the right, Homan's face as he realized the nation had just witnessed visual proof that the Trump border czar's main news-making talking point did not have the added virtue of being true.
And from our finance page, lagging subscribers spurs Times sell-off. The New York Times added digital subscribers more slowly in the second quarter, despite a busy news cycle that included the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran and the FIFA World Cup, worrying investors who sent its shares down more than 13%. The newspaper added about 280,000 digital-only subscribers in the second quarter, lower than the estimated 295,300 from Visible Alpha and the 310,000 it added in the previous quarter. Its total subscriber count now stands at 13.35 million. The results show declining search and referral traffic from Google is hurting even the Times. Long seen as a standard in digital publishing due to its success in building a vast subscription business around news and lifestyle content. We delivered our second quarter results against the backdrop of a rapidly changing information ecosystem that's shaped by a small number of big tech companies whose moves continue to result in less traffic to publishers. The Times isn't immune to that impact. The company has a goal of hitting 15 million subscribers by the end of next year, which would require it to add an average of 275,000 subscribers per quarter for the next 6 quarters. The slower second quarter subscriber growth came even after it had dropped its paywall for all FIFA World Cup coverage on The Athletic and introduced new coverage formats, helping the sports website draw its biggest audience ever. New York Times also said it expects digital-only subscription revenue to slow between 12 and 15% in the third quarter, a midpoint of which was below the estimate of 14.2%. Looking ahead, they expect the advances made in its spots coverage to power success in the NFL season, and that video was a long-term opportunity, even though it was playing a relatively minor role in the ad growth so far. New York Times flagship app features a TikTok-style vertical video feed in its Watch tab, complemented by a show section that offers the company's longer-form episodic video series for on-demand viewing. The total advertising revenue rose by 11.3% to $149.1 million, beating an estimate of $146.4 million.
Older workers rely on Social Security for retirement plan. This is from USA Today. Nearly half of older American workers expect to rely mainly on Social Security for income in retirement, according to a new report. To many in the retirement industry, that is a worrisome statistic. Social Security is not meant to be your only source of income in retirement, the Federal Social Security Administration cautions on its website. On average, the retirement trust fund will replace only about 40% of the money earned in working years. Retirement experts urge Americans to fund their retirement through multiple sources. Social Security, yes, but also retirement savings investments, other income sources, and perhaps a workplace pension. We would not recommend that anybody rely completely on Social Security for their retirement income, said Jessica Johnston, Senior Strategist for Economic Well-Being at the nonprofit National Council on Aging. It's more than likely to not be sufficient. Few younger workers think they will rely primarily on Social Security in retirement, if they think about retirement at all. As they approach retirement, however, those expectations change. The 2026 Retirement Trend Report from NFP, a property and casualty broker and benefits consultant, shows a gradual evolution in retirement expectations as workers age. Only 12% of workers under age 35 said they expect Social Security to be their main source of income after retirement, but the figure rises to 22% for workers ages 30 to 54 and to 41% for workers 55 and older. Another retirement report, the 2026 Retirement Confidence Survey from the Employee Benefit Research Institute, shows a similar trend. As workers age, Social Security looms ever larger in their retirement plans. Among workers ages 25 to 34, only 32% said they expected Social Security to be a major source of retirement income. For workers from ages 55 to 64, the figure rises to 44%. The EBRI report draws from surveys of more than 2,000 workers and retirees in January. Some American retirees can rely on Social Security for income and get by, retirement experts said, but nearly half, maybe not. That's way too high, said Craig Copeland, Director of Wealth Benefits Research at EBRI. I'm talking maybe 10% could do it, he said, and those people would not be living a good retirement. Within the retirement planning industry, debate rages about how large a role Social Security should play in an American worker's retirement plans. Financial planners urge workers to save hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions, to supplement Social Security in retirement. One rule of thumb suggests workers aim to save 10 times their annual income in a retirement account. Excuse me. Financial services firms publish retirement magic numbers derived from surveys that ask Americans how much money they think they would need for a comfortable retirement. One recent report put the magic number at $1.2 million. American workers read those reports. The idea of $1 million retirement magic number can feed retirement fears. It scares people when they see you need $2 million to retire, said a wealth management practice leader at NFP. In the NFP report, 69% of workers said they lacked confidence in their ability to achieve a comfortable retirement. More than 70% said their retirement savings were off track. The findings, released in July, draw from a survey of 1,000 working adults who were involved in financial planning decisions for their households. On the other side of the retirement planning debate, experts stress that there's no need for most workers to save a seven-figure sum for retirement. They note that millions of Americans retire with little or no savings, and most of them seem to be doing fine. A typical retiree has only $126,000 in household savings, according to a 2025 retirement survey from the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies. Other surveys suggest only about half of retirees have any retirement savings. Nonetheless, surveys show that most retirees are financially stable.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Guglielmo Arlene Ni Leone. Jedricic Eleanor, nicknamed Ellie, Ni Kutz. Petrov's Harry. Schwab Dorothy Agnes. And on the national scene, Geraldine D. Haas, 91, the First Lady of Chicago Jazz. She was a woman former Tribune critic Howard Reich called the First Lady of Chicago Jazz, and for decades, Geraldine DeHaas delighted in that role. She earned it too, those stunning performances, and as a passionate promoter and producer of jazz programs and events that changed the cultural face of the city. She died in the Englewood Health Hospital in New Jersey, where she had moved in 2014. 13. She was 91. She died of natural causes. At her bedside were her Chicago-born children, both of them, not surprisingly, accomplished singers and actors. Once again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
And now we'll go to our Royal Stars horoscope notes. Happy birthday for Thursday, August 6th, 2026. You are charming, strong-willed, and open-minded. You're also perceptive, independent, and determined. This is a year of service to others, probably to family. Therefore, take care of yourself so you can be a resource to those who turn to you for guidance, comfort, and courage. And the stars will show the kind of day you have. 5 is dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And perusing all the signs, it looks like everyone is having a positive and some an average day. Aries, positive. Discussions about home repairs and family matters, especially with respect to the cost needed to do the job, might occur. Tonight, conversations. Taurus, positive day. Today the moon is in your sign, dancing beautifully with Mercury, which will increase the pace of your day and attract others to you. Tonight, check your money. Gemini, positive day. Someone older might have advice for you today. Possibly you are the person dispensing advice. Tonight, you win. Cancer, positive day. It's the perfect day to draw up a budget and think about how to use your money as economically as possible. You might give advice to a boss or someone in authority, or a boss might have advice for you. Tonight, solitude. Leo, positive day. A conversation with a parent, boss, or someone in authority could be important today. It might be your chance to share your feelings about something. Tonight, friendships. Virgo, average day. You have a chance for some time alone today. You might do some deep thinking. Even shallow thinking is worthwhile. Tonight, you're admired. Libra, positive day. Discussions with partners, spouses, and close friends will be serious today, but meaningful. Advice might flow back and forth. Tonight, explore. Scorpio, positive day. You'll make a great impression on bosses, parents, teachers, and VIPs today. They see you as reliable, conscientious, and hardworking. Meanwhile, spouses, partners, and close friends will see you as bright, clever, and interesting. Tonight, check your finances. Sagittarius, positive day. This is the perfect day to study, write, or review an important paper. Your mind will be detail-oriented and self-disciplined. Tonight, cooperate. Capricorn, average day. This is a solid day to discuss how to divide assets or share the cost of something or deal with inheritances, taxes, and debt. Very likely it could relate to family matters or something to do with your home. Tonight, work. Aquarius, average day. When talking to someone close today, you'll steer the conversation in the way you want it to go. You know what's important to you, and you'll discuss it. Tonight, socialize. And Pisces, a positive day. This is a productive day. You'll keep plugging along at whatever you have to do with your job, your health, or a pet. Meanwhile, you'll enjoy little intervals and breaks where you can chat over the fence. Tonight, rest.
And today in history. In 1945, the Enola Gay bomber dropped the uranium bomb code-named Little Boy on Hiroshima, Japan, killing more than 70,000 people. It was the first atomic bomb used in combat. The U.S. military had tested one in mid-July over New Mexico. In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the landmark Voting Rights Act of 1965, barring racial discrimination in voting. It enforced the rights guaranteed by the Reconstruction era 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. And in 1986, William Schroeder died as the world's longest surviving recipient of an artificial heart up to that time. He was 54. He lived 620 days with the Jarvik 7 pump. In that time, he went fishing with his sons and celebrated his 33rd wedding anniversary. And a new addition to the zoo. An addax calf runs around its habitat at the Buffalo Zoo on Wednesday under the watchful eye of its mother, Patricia. The baby born on July 4th does not yet have a confirmed gender or name. The species of antelope is native to the deserts of North Africa. This addax birth marks an extraordinary feat of conservation, helping save a critically endangered species from extinction, said Buffalo Zoo President and CEO Lisa Smith. Western New York is a beautiful place, and each day we bring you a photo to prove it. And this is a beautiful little calf and his mom. It looks almost pure white. So if you're at the zoo, make sure you look it up. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, August 6th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak, and we'll go to our local news. Hochul asks Trump not to cut subsidies for Medicare Part D. Governor Kathy Hochul on Wednesday asked President Trump to scrap his administration's plans to cut federal subsidies this next year for Medicare Part D, which have helped lower the price of prescription drugs for seniors and others on Medicare. Citing estimates from policy analysts, Hochul said the cuts would lead to increased prescription drug costs for 1.3 million seniors in New York alone, at a time when affordability remains a top concern. There was no immediate estimate on the number of Western New Yorkers impacted by the cuts. The Trump administration's latest attack on Medicare will raise prescription drug costs for seniors across New York, and I'm calling on Trump to reverse these Medicare cuts now, Hochul said in a statement. Medicare Part D covers the cost of prescription drugs for recipients of Medicare, which includes people aged 65 and older, as well as younger recipients with disabilities, among others. In 2024, the Biden administration enacted the Part D Premium Stabilization Demonstration, a 3-year program to subsidize insurers and, in turn, lower prices for Medicare recipients. It was supposed to last throughout 2027, but will now end at the end of this year. On July 28th, Mehmet Oz, the administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, defended the early end of the program. The Biden administration gave billions of taxpayer money directly to big insurance companies. This is unacceptable, Oz stated. We are stabilizing the market so this bailout is no longer needed. Premiums will go up by less than $10 for most Medicare recipients, with many even seeing lower premiums. Every Medicare beneficiary still has access to low-cost plans, and we will continue to lower prescription drug prices for every American patient. Hochul said rising prescription drug price costs will put additional financial pressure on seniors living on fixed income. Republicans in Washington are hell-bent on making life harder and more expensive for hardworking Americans, the governor said. Hochul, a Democrat, is running for re-election this year against Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, a Republican and strong supporter of Trump. On Wednesday, when asked if he supported the Trump administration's plans to end the subsidies, Blakeman told reporters he would not support taxing your health care plan in a way that he said the governor had done.
Officials weigh options for Grand Island bridges. Every couple of years, maintenance and repairs take place on bridges connecting Grand Island, 2 connecting to the town of Tonawanda, 2 to Niagara Falls. Rather than dealing with that upkeep, the State Thruway Authority is considering another option sure to strike fear into any resident or commuter who counts on them: replacement of all 4 bridges. But fear not, island residents. Such a dramatic step is so far only being studied, not planned. In 2024, Congress approved a $1.6 million federal grant for authority to complete a planning and environmental linkages study that determined what the best steps forward for the bridges would be. Having received the money earlier this year, the authority is now beginning its review, which officials estimate will take up to 2 years. It will give us a guideline and help us plan for the future, Thruway Authority Executive Director Frank Horry said Wednesday at a news conference. John Bozer, Director of Infrastructure Management at the Thruway Authority, said the study will conduct a lifestyle cost analysis that examines the recurring maintenance costs to keep the bridges open, along with what is needed in the short term to keep the bridges open, safe, and operational. While a final solution is yet to be sorted out, Bozer said future options could range from keeping the current bridges up as they are to replacing them altogether with brand new bridges or underwater tunnels. Built in the 1930s and 60s, the four bridges, two on the north side and two on the south side, are part of the Niagara Thruway. In 2025, 45.8 million vehicles traveled over four bridges combined, with roughly 68,000 vehicles using the bridges every day. After decades, they have become increasingly expensive to maintain due to both their age and structural complexity. Asked about the future for the four bridges, Grand Island Supervisor Peter Marston said he was pleased to know the Thruway is taking a proactive approach. I'm happy they're not waiting until our backs are against the wall. The bridges are still operating and functional. Traffic regularly backs up on the Grand Island bridges during rush hour, even without construction. Any construction projects on the bridges add to the delays, and were any of the four bridges to be temporarily taken down to build a new one, the congestion would get worse. I think most islanders will tell you that we need at least another lane on each one of our bridges, or a secondary bridge that would take traffic at peak times. We get trouble every time we have an impaired vehicle on top of the bridge. It really backs up Grand Island, said Marston. It really affects us living here, getting home and leaving. I think people would like to see improved flows, which would mean more lanes. The funding for the study comes from a Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, better known as Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, signed into law by President Biden in 2021. The bill authorizes $1.2 trillion for transportation and infrastructure spending. As the study gets underway, it will happen in the backdrop of a $54 million project meant to fortify the bridges against severe earthquakes, ground motion, and soil failure that kicked off just last month. The project relies on $39 million in federal grant funding, with the remaining cost made up by the Thruway Authority.
State probe urged of abuse claims at Lakeview facility. This is from the Albany Bureau Chief. A prison watchdog association wants Inspector General Lucy Lang and an independent agency to investigate accusations from inmates at Lakeview Shock Incarceration Correctional Facility that staff subjected them to physical and sexual abuse, racism, and forms of torture. Inmates at the Chautauqua County facility said they experienced humiliation, abuse, and fear, as well as the lack of adequate medical and dental care, according to the report issued Monday by the Correctional Association of New York. Under state law, the association, or CANY, oversees the conditions of New York prisons and issues reports on findings. Lakeview, the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision's most western facility, offers a boot camp-style shock program that enables inmates who graduate from it to be released in 6 months. The facility in the village of Brockton offers a 90-day drug treatment program and a program for male inmates transitioning from restrictive housing. Allegations of excessive physical training, verbal and physical abuse, and untreated medical conditions raise serious concerns about whether Lakeview is achieving the intended therapeutic goals of the shock, drug treatment, and step-down programs, Association Executive Director Jennifer Scaife said in a statement. DOCCS officials called the claims blanket accusations that are unsubstantiated. They said correction officers who serve as drill instructors in the shock program are viewed as father figures by participants in an environment they described as therapeutic. The report offered contrary views from the incarcerated population. Inmates said correction staffers mocked a person with disabilities. One inmate recounted a drill instructor who threatened him, stating, "I'll knock your teeth out." Another inmate said that if you disagree, you could end up hurt. Another inmate described constant verbal abuse, saying, "It's like breathing," according to the report. During a visit to Lakeview on April 16, 2025, Correctional Association staffers said they witnessed DOCCS staffers force several inmates facing discipline to wear Burger King crowns, to show they wanted it their way. Inmates claimed that Lakeview staff, as a form of punishment, forced some prisoners to eat lunch while kneeling by trash cans and to stand all day and drink water while being refused bathroom breaks. This type of stress position has been recognized as torture in other contexts, the Correctional Association said in the 63-page report. SCAFE recommended that the Inspector General carry out an investigation into allegations of the use of stress positions as punishment. She said DOCCS should also bring an independent outside agency to evaluate the program models, staff practices, and overhaul institutional culture at Lakeview. The Correctional Association visited Lakeview a month after the end of the 22-day unsanctioned correction officer strike last year. The population of the facility had declined due to the state's suspension of transfers. 336 out of 720 available beds had been occupied. Governor Kathy Hochul had fired 113 officers at the facility due to their participation in a strike she repeatedly said was illegal. The report, which was the result of 57 inmate interviews, stated, 1. 21 of 23 inmates said they saw or experienced verbal, physical, or sexual abuse by staff, which the report noted was 53 percentage points higher than all other facilities the association visited in the preceding year. 2. 16 of 21 inmates said they experienced or witnessed racialized abuse, which the report said was 51 percentage points above the average. 3. The number of inmates who said they had received adequate medical care was among the lowest of the association's recent visit to facilities. The report said there were particularly notable concerns about access to medications and dental care for prisoners in the shock and drug treatment program. And 4, inmates said the facility imposed military-style expectations like public correction of posture or restricted affection during inmates' meetings with families in the visiting room. Some inmates said the staff mistreated their families, prompting one inmate to suggest family members not to come back. The report said Correctional Association members, after meeting with facility staff a few weeks after the visit, had noticed a high level of staff morale and job satisfaction at Lakeview and high confidence in the shock program. We noted a disconnect between the experience of staff and the experience of many of the incarcerated individuals with whom we spoke. A DOCCS spokesperson referred the Buffalo News to the agency's letter of response, which is in the report. DOCCS said the findings should be viewed in the context of limitations due to the recent correction officer strike that ended on March 10, 2025. In May 2026, a Chautauqua County grand jury indicted inmate AG 34, formerly of Niagara Falls, on second-degree assault charges for an allegedly brutal attack at Lakeview on a woman working in the facility and a correction officer. The woman needed hospital treatment for injuries to her head, neck, and jaw, while the officer suffered a concussion. DOCCS said it sent the agency's Office of Special Investigations to probe the inmate accusations of torture and abuse. Investigators who visited the facility on June 10th and 23rd walked and spoke with inmates at Lakeview who are liaisons between prisoners and staff. Investigators employed random body-worn cameras of staffers, reviewed video, and had drones observing interactions between staff and inmates. After speaking with numerous incarcerated individuals, touring the facility, and reviewing body-worn camera and drone video footage, no reports of abuse were reported or observed. None of the incarcerated expressed experiencing humiliation, abuse, or fear. Many felt appreciative of the shock program. Doc said the lack of specifics limited investigators' ability to probe the inmate concerns. CANY was unable to provide the department with specific identifiable incidents of alleged abusive practices and other misconduct by facility staff to investigate, nor did they provide us with any names of incarcerated individuals involved, the agency said. This significantly limits DOC's ability to conduct objective and evidence-based investigations into the allegations. The report said union representatives said Lakeview was not segregated like other facilities, and that civilian and correctional staff build off each other to collaboratively work through problems. In their view, COs are not simply supervising incarcerated people, but are almost acting as counselors, a dynamic they attributed to the structure of the shock incarceration program and the facility's broader rehabilitative mission. Jack Wild, a spokesperson for the Inspector General's office, said no priority is greater for Lang's office than ensuring that inmates are treated humanely and housed in conditions free of abuse, corruption, and crime. We review every one of the more than 1,000 complaints related to DOCS that we receive each year, including those from CANY and from DOCS itself, then conduct comprehensive investigations when appropriate, and publish the results when allegations are substantiated. Pat?
Time.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour. I was forgetting who was in charge with this at this point in time. Okay, we will go on to sports. Changing of the Guard. This is by Catherine Fitzgerald, who's a news staff reporter. The Buffalo Bills didn't have a training camp practice on Wednesday, but don't take that to mean they're not working. Austin Corbett, who is currently battling to be the starting left guard, knows that off days bring a different form of bonding for the team. You're spending time together in the sauna, in the ice tubs, Corbett said. You're spending time together, just the meals, going to movies together on off days. Families aren't coming up, and so you're kind of forced into it together. All of it leads to better communication on the field, an important matter for the Bills' offensive line as they tweak this year's starting lineup. You're just constantly working on that communication, and that's why you do so many things outside the building, too, Corbett said. Corbett is up against Alec Anderson in the position battle. The two have been rotating through training camp, which is challenging for each individual, but also presenting nuances of the game to lineman and left tackle Deion Dawkins. It's hard, Dawkins said Monday. Dawkins is entering his 10th year in the league. He's no stranger to turnover on the offensive line, and he's no stranger to using metaphors to describe his life in the NFL. So, picture me on an island, right? He mused. And then I finally get somebody that comes on the island and stays on the island with me for 2 years. I'm like, yo, what's up, brother? I know every morning we get orange juice. We get coffee. He might smoke a cigar. I know exactly where his family is going to be. The Bills have the benefit of returning their 2024-25 offensive line for last season, with David Edwards getting the start at left guard. Edwards' ability to dissect an opposing defense and communicate that to Dawkins was a big part of the Bills' offensive success. But even when there is consistency in personnel, Dawkins knows the long season can wear on any lineman and thus impact their play. Part of the challenge now is projecting what a teammate will be like come December or January. And that's on top of the original test of figuring out a left guard in general. Dawkins likened it to Bills quarterback Josh Allen having a rotating cast of receivers. Imagine trying to find your number one every single year and trying to figure out how it's going to be through the duration of the season. So that's how hard it is, because I know who my guys are, but I don't know who they are as a left guard consistently through the entire duration of the season. And their personalities are different. Anderson is brash and one of the first to join a fight, as evidenced by a padded practice on Tuesday. Corbett is quieter, more akin to Edwards in his mannerisms. Dawkins says he's a pro at learning the tendencies of new teammates at left guard. Some of the time at training camp is throwing extra things on their plate, Dawkins says, to see how each individual player reacts, and what that reaction in turn means for Dawkins. Corbett and Anderson are both up for the challenge. Corbett has the advantage of playing more times in the NFL. Anderson has the advantage of time with the Bills and with Dawkins in particular. I think right now it's just kind of the same stuff for me is going out there, and now it's just I'm competing to be the starter and feeling good about it all, especially with Dion playing to the left of me. I think that he and I are having great communication and great play style right now.
UB Ways quarterback return specialist options. We will sell no wine before it's time, University of Buffalo football coach. Peter Lambeau referenced the vintage Orson Welles line from Paul Mason commercials in the late 1970s during his first preseason press conference following Tuesday's practice. Lambeau was referring to his patience in selecting his starting quarterback, emphasizing that the decision will come when the time is right. But the double entendre disguised in the nostalgia quote could pertain to many of the Bulls' position openings. Sophomore quarterback Jason Wright found junior receiver Patrick Clax III in stride for a touchdown to highlight UB's first practice. It was one example of the flashes of talent Lambeau said Wright displayed. Senior Elijah Holmes, who previously started at Wingate, has a good handle of Buffalo's offense. Senior Mason Cumbie has been limited to scout team duties throughout his career, but recently he has impressed Lambeau. Perhaps the arrival of UB freshman quarterbacks Jake Forberger and Quoran McNeil alerted Cumbie. I thought Cumbie had just an okay spring, but now you bring in a couple freshman quarterbacks and the dynamics in the room change, and maybe the sense of urgency changes a little bit. And I noticed during some of our skill sessions that he was making some progress over the summer, and I noticed that again today, said Lambeau. Perhaps one quarterback isn't the answer. Cumbie or Wright could be the run threat in a two-quarterback system, but don't expect Lambeau to set a deadline. We'll make no decision before it's necessary to make it, and hopefully we'll have really, really good clarity to make the best possible decision to put this team in position to be successful. And the answer to that question might be playing two guys, Lambeau said. Antonio Gibson, who was drafted out of Memphis in 2020, emerged as the Tigers' kick returner when Lambeau was there in 2019. Memphis used multiple players before head coach Mike Norvell suggested giving Gibson a chance midseason. Lambeau may need to use simple returners at UB as well. Terrence Sheldon Jr., who returned kicks the past 2 years, was not mentioned by Lambeau when he named who was being considered. The junior running back appears to be gearing up for more carries in the backfield. Lambeau named running backs Messiah Birch and James McNeil Jr. of Buffalo and receiver Jalen Andrews as potential kick returners. Receiver Philip Fulmar is receiving reps at kick and punt returner. Safety Miles Greer, who was an All-American returner during his freshman season at Division II Shepherdstown, West Virginia University in 2023, is also being considered to return punts. He returned one punt for 14 yards in 2025. Other players will be evaluated as well, as UB hopes to find another returner as productive as Victor Snow, who has since transferred to North Carolina State after earning All-MAC first-team receiver and second-team return specialist honors last year. That year at Memphis, we actually had 3 different players return kickoffs for touchdowns, Lambeau said. So, we're not afraid to mix and match different guys, and that may be the situation where, over the course of the year, it could change.
And now to Major League Baseball. Lombard homers in Yankees debut. George Lombard Jr. hit his first career home run in his Major League debut. Ryan Weathers pitched 6 strong innings, and the host New York Yankees recorded a 2-0 victory over the St. Louis Cardinals on Tuesday night. Jazz Chisholm Jr. also homered as the Yankees won for the 10th time in 16 games. Lombard started at shortstop and batted eighth after the Yankees called him up from Triple-A Scranton Wilkes-Barre. He is regarded as New York's top prospect, and the Yankees declined to include him in trades for star players ahead of Monday's trade deadline. Louis Torrens belted a 3-run homer and drove in 4 runs, and Bo Bichette and Carson Benj added solo shots as the visiting New York Mets beat the Cleveland Guardians 6-2. Torrens went deep in the second inning, and Bichette homered in the third, both off Joey Cantillo 8-7, as the Mets seized a 4-0 lead. Benjay added a 451-foot blast to straightaway center field in the 8th against Slade Ciccone to close out the scoring. Taylor Trammell clubbed a 3-run homer. Hayden Wisniewski delivered a quality start, and the Houston Astros beat the Toronto Blue Jays 7-2. The Astros were victorious for the 12th time in 14 games behind Wisniewski 2-0, and a 4-run 5th inning, a mid-game rally that enabled Wisniewski to record his second win in as many starts after missing the previous 14 months following Tommy John surgery. And league standings in the American League East, Tampa Bay is first, New York second, Boston third, then Baltimore and Toronto. In the Central Division, Chicago is first with Cleveland second, followed by Minnesota, Detroit, and Kansas City. And in the West, Houston is first, Texas second, followed by Seattle, the Athletics, and Los Angeles. In the National League East, Atlanta is first, Philadelphia second, followed by Miami, Washington, New York. In the Central League, National League, Milwaukee is first, Chicago is second, followed by Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and Cincinnati. And in the West, Los Angeles is first, and Arizona is second, followed by San Diego, San Francisco, and Colorado.
And some NFL notes. The Washington Commanders are set to sign 4-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Stefon Diggs, multiple outlets reported on Wednesday. Diggs, 32, played last season with the New England Patriots and posted his 7th 1,000-yard campaign in the past 8 years. ESPN reported Diggs is getting a 1-year deal with the Commanders worth up to $12 million with incentives. New England released Diggs on March 4th after he played 1 season on a 3-year, $63 million contract. Okay. The San Francisco 49ers addressed the wide receiver position by signing Darrell Hodge to a 1-year contract on Wednesday. They also signed Ogbo Okoronkwo to a 1-year deal. Financial terms were not disclosed on either deal, and waived fellow defensive line Kevin Givens and Cameron Sample. The addition of Hodge comes after the 49ers lost Ricky Pearsall to a season-ending knee injury. Hodge, 31, spent the past 4 seasons with the Atlanta Falcons, but was limited to just 3 catches for 31 yards in 12 games. 1 start in 2025. He spent the majority of his time competing on special teams. Tests confirmed the Atlanta Falcons pass rusher Jalen Walker sustained a torn ACL and missed the upcoming season. The team announced on Wednesday Walker was carted off the field at training camp on Tuesday after suffering the injury doing a 2-minute simulation in a non-padded 11-on-11 practice. Teammates took a knee and surrounded Walker as he was being treated, bringing a somber end to Tuesday's session. The Chicago Bears and right tackle Darrell Wright reached an agreement on a 4-year contract extension. Financial terms were not confirmed, but multiple reports said it was worth $116 million and included $93 million guaranteed, the most guaranteed money for an offensive lineman in league history. The Jacksonville Jaguars placed veteran offensive lineman Tristan Colon on the reserve retired list, marking his retirement after 6 NFL seasons. And free agent tight end Zach Ertz has officially been declared for all football activities following a torn ACL last season.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is approximately 29 minutes past the hour. Amy will now turn to see what Eric has to say. Boyfriend's neighbor offended, but won't say why. Dear Eric, my 77-year-old boyfriend has a lovely 95-year-old neighbor whom I visit with him and sometimes on my own. Recently, my boyfriend has been ill and has been staying with me. His neighbor has called me a couple of times to hear how he is doing. Yesterday, he felt well enough to go back to his home, and she confided in him that she will never call me again, as I said something that hurt her feelings. She told him not to tell me. So what does he do? He tells me. I was so distraught that I cannot think of what I said to hurt her. And I feel he should not have told me since she told him not to. I have known her for 4 years. I hug her hello and goodbye, have brought her flowers, and have always admired her. He did not want to keep a secret from me, and that's why he told me. I feel he should have honored her wishes or told her not to involve him, but to talk to me directly. I don't feel I can address her about this issue, or she will know he did not abide by her wishes. And now I will feel very awkward around her. He insists he was right to have told me. Am I wrong for not wanting to know? Had he not told me, I feel she would have eventually gotten over it or would have told me directly. Signed, Upset. Dear Upset, his intentions may have been very good, but I'm not sure what he thought he was accomplishing by telling you that his neighbor was angry with you, especially since he didn't know the cause. This just puts an unsolvable conflict in your lap. It would be most helpful if he talked to his neighbor again and asked her what offended her and what you can do to make it right. You then would have more information and could decide if you want to address it or leave it be. The fault isn't all his, however. It's not right for her to tell him that she's upset with you and then tell him not to tell you. This solves nothing either. But if your boyfriend won't address it with her again, it may be best to acknowledge that his neighbor wasn't really looking for solutions. Hopefully he remains well and doesn't have to stay at your home for an extended period again, thereby alleviating the need for her to call. Next letter. Dear Eric, I hired a cleaning lady who was great, but she would also often bring help with her or send someone in her place. This other person accidentally broke a decorative piece in the bathroom, which upon the fall broke a sink, resulting in a hole in the porcelain. This, in turn, resulted in a bathroom remodel because the entire two-sink vanity needed to be replaced. The cleaning lady was very apologetic and offered to pay for the sink itself. Since then, a new vanity has been installed. The assistant has taken over our account for all the cleanings going forward since January, and I deal directly with her only. But after our last cleaning, it was apparent that some things were placed on the counter which stripped the finish on the countertop. Marks were left in the shape of rings from the bottom of containers that essentially removed the glossy surface of the counter. I can't find any product to restore it without getting some kind of professional to resurface the whole counter. I told the cleaning person that I would like to skip this month. Her response seemed defensive, asking, "If you need to say anything, you can tell me, okay?" I would like to avoid any future mishaps, but the only way to guarantee it is going back to cleaning my own house. How should I gently break the news to end this professional relationship? Signed, Double Vanity. Dear Vanity, it sounds like she's giving you the out that you're looking for. Because this is a professional relationship, it's fine to say, "I've decided to go a different way," or "I appreciate your services and I know mistakes happen, but this isn't working for me anymore." While the first incident seems to have been handled fairly, it's a little concerning that some product was placed on your vanity that stripped the finish. Either this is an issue of carelessness or a lack of communication between you and the cleaning service. Neither is unfixable. But it sounds like the trust that you have about these people being in your home is faltering, and so it may always be an issue. It's okay to say we've reached the end of our road and wish her well.
Our first life feature. Under Patel, FBI has forged ties with China, Russia to fight crime. FBI Director Kash Patel says he has forged a new law enforcement partnerships with China and Russia, two long-term U.S. rivals, over the past year in hopes of gaining allies in combating transnational crime, including fentanyl, cyber fraud, and child sexual exploitation. The partnerships have involved personal exchanges in which Chinese law enforcement officials have visited the United States and FBI agents have traveled to China to work on cases together and share intelligence. Separately, FBI and Chinese officers have carried out joint raids and arrests under the arrangements. Patel returned from a trip to Beijing in late July, and a similar trip to Russia has been tentatively planned for October, according to FBI officials. In exclusive interviews with Reuters, Patel described the FBI's initiatives with what he called non-traditional partners as selective and limited to specific types of transnational crimes, such as global child pornography networks and the cyber scam centers that prey on Americans. The partnerships, known internally as working groups, represent a major break with the past and have raised concerns within the broader counterintelligence community about the risks posed by sharing sensitive domestic security information with authoritarian regimes working to undermine the United States economically and militarily around the world. In May, the FBI, China's Ministry of Public Security, and Dubai police worked together in Operation Sand Dollar, a major raid on a cyber scam center in Dubai that led to 300 arrests, 300 million seized, and thousands of trafficked workers freed, the FBI stated. In at least one case, a suspect inside China who was accused of serious violent crimes was repatriated to the United States, according to Chinese state media. U.S. officials have long portrayed Russia and China as exporters of crime instead of potential allies in combating it, not to mention sources of espionage aimed at American interests worldwide. Patel, appointed by President Trump, said such risks can be managed. They are both new and dynamic relationships, and we are extremely mindful of their adversarial approach on many matters. They are not going to stop, but if we can go and have wins for America, then we must engage, Patel stated. The current relationship between the Trump's visit to China in May 2025 and was followed by 2 trips by Patel to China. Patel said the cooperation has expanded across 4 working groups: cyber fraud, violent crimes against children, counter-narcotics, and a fugitive task force. As part of the partnership, Patel has brought officials from China's Ministry of Public Security, or MPS, to multiple FBI facilities in the United States to share intelligence and investigative information. Every month they send their working level MPS officers here, and the following month we go there. They are speaking with us daily, which has also never happened before, said Patel. Asked about joint law enforcement operations, a spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Washington said, "We have always believed that a dialogue and negotiation are the right way forward, and that military means offer no solution." Patel said information exchanges are narrow in scope and limited to the 4 types of transnational crime where intelligence sharing is reciprocal. Patel said these new FBI partners would not replace longtime U.S. allies such as the Five Eyes intelligence partnership, with Canada, Australia, Britain, and New Zealand. Five Eyes will always be our most important intelligence relationship. No one is trying to replace that, Patel said. Unlike military and traditional intelligence agencies, we have a unique lane to drive this dynamic change with law enforcement, which is an apolitical mission. During his trip to Asia last month, Patel met with Chinese Minister of Public Security Wang Jianhong and Vice Minister Zhu Datong to deepen what Chinese state media described as practical cooperation on a range of criminal activities. The cooperation between U.S. law enforcement and leading global adversaries is a major break from the past and reflects Trump's personal approach to diplomacy with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin. China and Russia are our enemies, period, said Jeff Crocker, a former FBI supervisory agent who retired in 2024. They are actively trying to harm our country physically, economically, and militarily. Crocker said that there are enormous risks related to giving Chinese officials access to American intelligence community, diplomatic personnel, and U.S. government facilities and contractors. Chinese and Russian agents would use any access to U.S. facilities as an opportunity to infiltrate them. So this is a great cover for them, Crocker said. Patel said counterintelligence operations and countermeasures are deployed for any foreign visitors to FBI facilities. 3 former FBI employees told Reuters this usually involves electronic and physical surveillance, particularly for people from countries considered the most dangerous U.S. adversaries. We know exactly who is coming here and we vet them, Patel said. The Kremlin and the Russian embassy in Washington did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Patel said there have been months of behind-the-scenes law enforcement collaboration with Russia targeting violent criminal networks. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. We've been at this for 15 months, Patel said. An internal memo review by Reuters credited the FBI's cooperation with China's Ministry of Public Security in multiple operations against Chinese pharmaceutical companies this year. The memo said this led to the arrest of 9 people, the shutdown of 2 chemical production facilities and 3 associated websites, and the seizure of fentanyl precursor chemicals, likely otherwise destined for the United States. The memo did not specify where these arrests and seizures occurred. Vanda Velbob Brown, a senior fellow in foreign policy at the Brookings Institution think tank in Washington, said fentanyl overdoses have been declining rapidly in the United States since the winter of 2022, likely due to cooperation with China and other factors such as wide availability of the life-saving drug naloxone. It could be that people who were already vulnerable had already died, Velbob Brown said. I think that the cooperation is useful, should be fostered, and that it contributed to some extent, referring to the decline in U.S. overdoses. But how much is really hard to know, and there are a lot of complexities to it. Chinese law enforcement worked with the FBI's field office in Omaha, Nebraska, to take down multinational child sexual abuse materials network in June, an operation that included the arrest of 16 suspects, according to the FBI memo. The expanding cooperation comes after years of deep suspicion between the United States, which has accused China of turning a blind eye to its production of the precursor chemicals required to manufacture fentanyl, and Chinese authorities who ended cooperation due to political disagreements, such as former U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi's 2022 visit to Taiwan. Secretary of State Marco Rubio offered a cautious assessment of Chinese cooperation. During a visit to the Philippines last month, Rubio called cooperation with China on fentanyl precursors a work in progress. I think we've made some progress on that front, but not entirely where we need to be, Rubio told reporters. Patel said the playbook that is used to work with China and Russia could be applied to other non-traditional intelligence sharing partnerships tailored to each country. The fact that we did it with China, Patel said, when everyone said don't do it and you can't do it, shows that we can do it with almost anyone.
And our analysis article from USA Today, from SAVE Act to war spending, Republicans are bitterly divided. Congressional Republicans are headed into the home stretch of a crucial midterm election year, bitterly divided over their competing legislative priorities. Between the Senate and House of Representatives, there are vastly different expectations among GOP lawmakers over what they can accomplish over the remainder of the year. The centerpieces of President Trump's agenda, enacting voting restrictions, ramping up defense spending amid the Iran war, confirming cabinet nominees, and a long shot effort to eliminate the Senate's filibuster, have sown intra-party discord. Republican defections in the House of Representatives have repeatedly prompted symbolic rebukes of the Iran war. Fiscal conservatives like Representative Chip Roy from Texas are miffed about Trump's push for billions in more spending without compensating spending cuts. Staunch MAGA supporters like Representative Anna Paulina Luna of Florida are openly griping about Senate Majority Leader John Thune's refusal to upend his chamber's voting rules. Internal strategy documents obtained by USA Today from within the Senate Republican Conference have warned of stories of conflict between Republicans. Getting everyone on the same page, in short, is proving to be a challenge. We keep overpromising and underdelivering, Senator John Corwin of Texas told reporters last week, which is not a recipe for good morale or high voter participation in the midterm elections. Stark disagreements within the GOP are jeopardizing the political potential of what could ultimately become the last months-long stretch for years when the party has full control of Capitol Hill. Before the House left for August recess, one congressman summed up how Republicans in the lower chamber have been feeling lately about their Senate counterparts. The Senate has been the quicksand of any good legislation, South Carolina Representative Ralph Norman said. The day before he made those comments, the House passed a budget plan on the party line vote to allocate more than $70 billion to defense and intelligence spending. Part of that money would be used to replenish munitions and weapons depleted in the Iran war. The blueprint set aside several $billion for farm assistance, too. Crucially, it also included about $10 billion for election-related purposes. House Speaker Mike Johnson and the White House said that money could be used to implement elements of the Save America Act, the president's election overhaul bill that would restrict mail-in voting and require photo ID and proof of citizenship to cast a ballot. The budget gambit wouldn't necessarily include the full SAVE Act, though. Instead, it could incentivize states through grants to implement elements of the bill. Standing next to Vice President Vance in mid-July, Johnson called it our best shot at enacting our party's top priority legislation. Key Senate Republicans, on the other hand, are clearly less excited about it. Because of special Senate rules, the latest budget legislation needs only 50 votes to pass. So-called reconciliation bills can avoid the typical 60 vote for the threshold known as the filibuster, which the president has been urging the Senate to get rid of for months. Yet GOP senators have a wide range of concerns with the new reconciliation bill. It doesn't have enough money for the Pentagon, some say, including South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds. It probably is not enough to take care of the problem, he said in July, referring to the military's depleted resources amid the Iran war. Others, like retiring Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, said they'll refuse to vote for the budget bill if it includes the Save America Act because it's too complex to try to implement before the midterm elections. The effort to pass the legislation is a waste of time and distracts from the Senate's other work, Tillis said. People are selling you a bill of goods, Tillis said on the Senate floor in July. He and Senators Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell voted in June against adding part of SAVE and to an ICE funding bill. Murkowski has been outspoken about how certain voting restrictions in the legislation would hurt rural communities in her home state, Alaska. Thune, for his part, is wary of the uphill battle another budget bill would cause. The legislation, a majority leader warned at a news conference recently, could overtake the work of as many as a dozen committees. It also could force Republicans in battleground states to take politically uncomfortable votes in marathon vote-oramas, a controversial side effect of passing party-line budget bills that give Democrats unusual agenda-setting power. In the last reconciliation fight, Democrats managed to put several Republicans on the record rebuking Trump's ballroom and weaponization fund. We're taking a hard look at the latest reconciliation bill, Thune said, but we also know we have to have 50 votes. And at the moment, as I've said before, we're probably not there. Top White House officials, including Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought, met with Senate Republicans last week to get everyone on the same page about the legislation. Several emerged with unanswered questions. I've seen this vampire movie before, Louisiana Senator John Kennedy said, employing a metaphor he often uses to describe political stalemates. I'm not sure we have a plan. Both the House and Senate are scheduled to be gone for much of August and October, leaving them just a matter of weeks in session before November's election.
8 are losing jobs at Channel 7 in Scripps overall. WKBW anchor Phoeben Kashahun is one of 8 members of the EW Scripps station news department being let go September 1 in a nationwide reorganization emphasizing streaming newscasts and the use of AI and automation that has led to the loss of 268 jobs at the company's stations across the country. Kashahun, who has been the 11 p.m. weekday anchor since 2022, is the most recognizable name in the local job cuts that include the station's assistant news director, 3 directors, an executive producer of digital news, and a producer. She is a Dallas native who joined Channel 7 5 years ago as the noon and 5:30 anchor and weekday reporter. The 8 people losing their jobs in the news department, which is in 3rd place in ratings in Western New York, aren't the only departures at the station. Channel 7 sports anchor reporter Dom Tibbetts is leaving August 23rd after accepting a sports job at KNXV in Phoenix, leaving sports director Matt Bove alone in the department before the start of the Buffalo Bills season, unless a replacement will be hired. Channel 7 morning anchor Katie Morse recently announced that she has taken a marketing job at Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center. Her final broadcast will be August 14th. Since Kashahun would seem to be at least a potential replacement for Morse, it is unclear if the morning job alongside co-anchor Ed Dranch will be filled. Lee Ann Markins, Channel 7 station manager, hasn't responded to an email asking who will replace Morse. The departures of Kasun Morse leave Channel 7 short on regular news anchors and without a female anchor. Jeff Russo, Michael Wooten, and Dranch remain as anchors, and reporter Derek Hyde also occasional anchors. Scripps has increasingly devalued anchors. At 11 p.m. Tuesday, Russo introduced a couple of stories on what appeared to be a newscast that was earlier recorded, as some of Channel 7's newscasts are. It is also unclear how Channel 7 will produce its newscasts with so many behind-the-scenes staffers leaving what already is the smallest TV news staff in Western New York. Unless replacements are hired for Kassam, Morse, and Tibbetts, the new staff of 15 will consist of 7 reporters, 4 anchors who also report, 3 meteorologists, and 1 member of the sports department. In an email to Scripps employees, Adam Simpson, the company's president and chief executive officer, said the plan is to roll out 24/7 local news streams while continuing broadcasting scheduled newscasts on its stations. Simpson said the implementation of phase of what he called the refounding of the 150-year-old media company had to be done for the modern audience and in a way sustainable in today's media marketplace. That means organizing our company around how people consume media today, not around how we've always done things. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, August the 6th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekdays and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, please call us on 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ruth Nowotniak.
and Pat Lamont. Thank you for listening. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability